Hi, this is Eric Stromquist. Welcome to episode 224 of Control Talk Now, the Smart Buildings videocast and podcast for the week ending May 7th, 2017. I am joined, as usual, but not so as usual, because he is in-house, by the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only, Kenny Smyers, the control man from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who is in Atlanta today. Kenny, welcome to the Big A.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. Yep, you're right. I'm not in Kansas anymore. I am in the studio here, and very impressed by the environment here. I mean, you've done a lot to really pick up the technical stuff. Unfortunately, and unbeknownst to the Controltrends community, it was a disaster in the making this morning with some of the things you tried, and they went sour, and it's a shame because I don't think people understand how much time and effort you put into making all this stuff work and make it look easy, but it's a real pain in the you know what?
It is a pain in the keister, and we tried to record some interviews earlier. We'll get to those. We got some great guests this week, but we're going to call this the dark episode because our guests this week are all audio only. So when we get to that part, we will deal with it. But Kenny, we were in Memphis, Tennessee last week at CGNA, Controls Group North America. Big meeting there, huh?
Sure was. I was down in Memphis, Tennessee, and one thing to say about that, what a remarkable city, what a historic city that is, and highly recommend to the Controltrends community. If you have an opportunity to visit there, by all means do it. The CGNA Synergy Conference was, again, one of those highly mobile, networked, intensive 2.5 days of all the above, social, a lot of business stuff, a lot of breakouts. You and I both gave a presentation on the engaging process in selling. But we got to hear a lot of good technical stuff. There was a vendoropoly down there where we got to see all the vendors go around and hear what's new. There's some great new products out there and new solutions. What do you think?
Well, I thought it was a great thing, great show too. I came back a little bit early. You stayed on. You went to Graceland, and is it true they mistook you for being Elvis Presley back for the dead? I don't know. You've been following like the news stations. They said that Elvis came back to Graceland, and I'm pretty sure that was you, huh?
Yeah. I was walking around with an Elvis face in front of me. No, I had been there previously 4 years ago, I'd say, with my brother David. We were coming back from a trip, and we had to stop in there. They have redone it. They opened up a new facility down there in March. That they've taken some of the memorabilia and some of the artifacts out of the house, and they put them in these warehouses now. So you have it's major league. It's like going to Disney World, and you could spend all day easily. And then also we went to that Sun Record Studios, and where Elvis sang the Heartbreak Hotel, right the echo on the floor and the microphones there, and it put chills down your back,
Oh, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Well, buddy, we got some great interviews, so let's get started with our first one. How about introducing Leroy, Walden, and Fred Gordy?
I'd love to, Eric. We'd like to reacquaint Controltrends with two long-standing professional, true veterans in the industry. They're always out front, identifying the issues and the trends and delivering the solutions. That's the hard part. I'd like to introduce President and Chief Consultant at High Rose Consultants, Leroy Walden, and Fred Gordy, the Director of Cybersecurity for Intelligent Buildings. Welcome to the show, guys.
Welcome, guys.
Hey, we're glad to be here. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate letting me get on.
Hey, well, always. So the first one that spoke was Leroy Walden. The second was Fred Gordy. And I got to tell you what, guys, I got two small children at home. Both you guys spent quite a bit of time at one of our largest customers, McKinney's, one of the premier building automation controls contractors, I say, on the planet. Now you guys are gone, man. We miss you. And I sort of want to set the context. We had Leroy on a couple weeks ago, and Leroy and I went back. We started pretty much the same time. We both started in distribution. Leroy went on to through distribution, and he was one of the first guys to sort of transition from pneumatics into building automation control. So Leroy's got a great context because he has just seen how everything has changed. And in Leroy's wisdom, he and Fred got together at McKinney's, and I think Fred, being the visionary he is, said, "Hey, man, we got to start focusing on cybersecurity because this is going to be an issue." So McKinney's was one of the first companies that I knew of that sort of had a cybersecurity program in place and was rocking and rolling with that before. You were cybersecurity before cybersecurity was cool, right, boys?
Yeah, and we paid for it, didn't we, Leroy? No,
I appreciate it, Eric. Had a really good opportunity that had to get to know Fred very early in my career at McKinney's, and he joined the company, and what an asset he became to us, our customers. over the years. And you're right. I mean, when we all were fighting so hard to get building systems connected to the internet, one of the unintended consequences was that a lot of the bad guys were staying awake at night trying to make sure that are trying to get into the systems. And so when it became more and more apparent that cybersecurity was going to become a big issue, Fred stepped into the breach and said, "Let me take the lead on this." And this is something I'm very interested in, something I'm very passionate about. I want to follow through on it. And so since that time, he's really become very prominent. So Fred, great pleasure to call you a friend. Great pleasure to call you a past coworker and now collaborator on stuff that's going on in the industry, specifically around the Realcomm IvyCon. I've been talking about that. The last time we talked a little bit about that. I've done a few posts on LinkedIn about Realcomm IvyCon. I'm really on fire about it because there's two groups that are coming together in a way that's very positive. It's the real estate professional group and then also the system integrator group. And so one thing about Realcomm IvyCon is that it comes around every year. And the thing that's really kind of neat about it, we got 24 sessions that are going on concurrently across the 3 days. There's a best practices showcase, which basically it's all the people that are who's who in products, and whether it be software, whether it be systems, whether it be services. There's also the Digi Awards, which you guys are Controltrends awards know that that awards in the digital and technology space are very prominent these days. So the Digi Awards, and then there's 10 project site tours that will be going on Friday. But specifically, I think it's pretty important for us to kind of focus on the pre-conference events. And the pre-conference events, there's two that are very important, I feel, for integrators, and ones that I know that meant a lot to me over the years, is that there's the focus on cybersecurity as it relates to building operational technology. That goes from 8:30 to 11:30 on the 13th, and then immediately following after lunch is the Smart Building Integrator Summit, which I talked a lot about last time. And the offer of a $100 discount still stands. Any of you guys or listeners send me an email, I'll send you that discount code.
Well, real quick, give them the email address, Leroy. You're saying an awful lot, buddy, and I want to break it down, man, because you missed the best part, man. We're going to be in San Diego, man. It's cold in Atlanta today. I know it's cold where you are up in the mountains of North Carolina. Fred, I mean, you're so cool all the time. You're always chilly, but man, San Diego. So real quick, while we're thinking about it, give them that email, because it's not too late to get there. I mean, where else are you going to see Leroy Walden, Fred Gordy, and the man, the myth, the legend, man? So it's a great show. We'll talk more about it, but give them the email address real quick, buddy.
Sure, real simple. Leroy.walden@highroseconsultants.com. And hopefully Eric will put it in a link in the bottom of the webcast here so you can dial it up online.
Yeah, and so what you need to do is send Leroy an email and say, "Hey, Ken and Eric said I want $100 off now," and sign up, right? So, man, Kenny, we got Fred back on, man. We hadn't had you in a while, buddy.
Yeah.
We got to get Fred to tell us a little bit about the history. Fred, I think one of the first times I heard you do a presentation on cybersecurity, I think I really got it when you explained the difference between IT and OT. Why don't you just set us back, a couple years when you got started, and really how you observed where the issues came and how our industry was ripe. We had all this. We were unaware of security, so we just kept put stuff in. So give us the 411 on the history of cybersecurity and IT OT.
Sure. So before I get started, really though, I got to give credit back to Leroy. When I came to McKinney's, it was a really good time for my career, and Leroy gave me the opportunity to kind of take the ball and run with cybersecurity, and it was his leadership. Like Eric, you said McKinney's was one of the first to actually do this kind of stuff, and it wasn't cool at the time. And Leroy gave me the support that I needed to get things started. So I got to give kudos to him to get this whole thing kicked off.
Thank you, Fred.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think, not to be lost, because, you guys prepared the next generation really good. So, Stephen Johnson, who's doing the automation controls down there at McKinney's now, has carried on in your guys' tradition. So listen, my two small kids need shoes, and I'm still paying for 3 divorces. So please reach out and buy some stuff from McKinney's.
Okay. No. But okay, so let's take a quick history lesson. like Leroy said, I mean, when the integrator community got started, and Leroy and I have talked about this on numerous occasions. I mean, it was a system that was pretty much standalone. There was no interest in it other than just running the building. But as time progressed, the computers became more prevalent in the building control space, and as a result, the integrators had to take over and learn certain aspects of IT, but just enough to get things communicating with each other. So that began a kind of a cycle that none of us really intended it to go where it was. But what happened is there was a codependency that was kind of developed between the facility operations guys and the integrators. The facility operations guys, their role is to keep the building running, introduce the new computer controls. The integrator would bring them in, and they wanted to make sure that the customer service, and that's a good thing. The problem with that is the easier we made it and the more open we made it, then it just set itself up to have a numerous amount of holes in the system. Fast forward a little bit. The reality is, just like a server that's sitting in a data center rack, a control system was never meant to protect itself by itself. You can put a server in a data center, but if you don't put the hardened bubble around it, the server is going to be shredded. So it's imperative for us to begin both sides of the aisle, so to speak. IT begins to need to learn OT language, and OT needs to begin to learn IT language. But it's going to take a unique skill set to have somebody sitting in the gap. So that's basically how we got here.
Very well said. Yep. So when we quantify things, we're seeing kind of like a slow start to people responding to cybersecurity and some of the very important wisdoms that you're talking about and giving us. Why is there such a reluctance? You always said that everybody has to take their part and get involved, but why does it seem like there's resistance to something that's so important?
Well, let me say this first. Actually, in the past year, I've seen a significant uptick in people not only taking an interest, but also doing stuff about it. But to your point, and the thing that is still permeated in the industry is it couldn't happen to me. I mean, it's just like you see something on the news, something horrible happens in somebody else's neighborhood. You say that's a terrible thing, and I don't want that to happen here, but we're okay. So, it's not all about just the physical aspect of it. I mean, if they came in and tore up some equipment, that's a bad thing. But the thing that I think is making some of these companies become more aware and more proactive is they realize brand damage. I mean, who can put a price tag on brand damage? In other words, I had a meeting one time with a financial group, and the facility operations guy actually got it. One of the people in the room says, well, what do we care if they blink the lights inside of one of our banks? I mean, it's not connected to the POS system or the ATM system or anything like that. Well, this facility operations director said, I care because the public is going to wonder what else did they get. So you have that aspect where people are waking up to, hey, this could cost me customers. The other is the government has put with the FTC, they can sue you, or the SEC can fine you. And then I work with a large medical group, and there's a whole lot of guidelines. We don't have time to go through them, but are mandating that not only does the manufacturer have to certify that the systems are secure, they're putting onus on the integrator, and integrators need to wake up to, you're going to start getting contracts that say you have to verify that your system is secure before we let you put it in.
Right. So what's the, just to get the listeners kind of, I'm glad to hear, first of all, you say that in a year's time that there has been a much more fervent response. And we talk about the different things. We just came from a meeting, CGNA, where one of the wholesalers, a large wholesaler, I won't say where, but
ransomware, baby, ransomware.
Oh,
man.
that's everywhere.
And they had until Friday 1:00 to come up with $8,000 worth of Bitcoin, or they were going to take their database away forever. So,
well, and the funny thing about it was this guy had an IT department in it, And after it was all said and done, he said, "Man, the ransomware people have much more ethical and produce better results than his IT people he was paying all kinds of money."
Can I interject something right there?
Sure.
You bring the ransomware, and we have seen, and I personally know of several ransomware attacks on control systems. And in some cases, they were able to recover because they actually had a good recovery strategy. They had good backups. And then the other ones, they just had to pay it. But the thing I want to interject here is, Ken, you bring up a really good point, is ransomware is all about people. It's not about somebody coming in and hacking your system remotely. It's an email. It's a click. That's it. And once that thing is released onto your network, who knows where it's going to go. But the point being is, you can do all of these other things, but if you're not socializing and educating your employees, it does you no good.
Well, and Fred, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, that's something that your company now, Intelligent Buildings, does. That's a big part of what you guys do. And also, I think that's something that our audience can learn at Realcomm IBCon. There's going to be a real focus there, right, Leroy? So that is a great place if you're sort of at ground zero and really want to jumpstart and understand and come back with usable type things. Realcomm IBCon is a great place to go. Or contacting you guys is, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I appreciate you bringing that up. One thing that's really kind of neat is that last year during the Smart Building Integrator Summit, I was asked to present, what's the integrator's role in cybersecurity. And basically what I did, I talked about from the business aspect, and Fred kind of pointed this out, is that a lot of big companies are basically fixing risk by pushing responsibility for cyber threats down to the contractors who are contracted them. So it's becoming more and more prominent from a business perspective and a business continuity perspective for an integrator to make sure that they've got their legal footing in good shape as it relates to what their responsibility is. And what was really kind of interesting is we got a really good uptake on that session last year, and to the point to where Jim Young and Howard Berger decided this year, let's have a focus. Let's have a true 3-4 hour focus around that cybersecurity and how it's going to impact the real estate, and particularly with the continued exponential growth of Internet of Things and people getting more smart technologies built into their buildings. And so that's the other thing. And the other thing I want to point out, too, is Fred will be actually participating not only in the Integrator Summit, but he's also going to be a part of the Smart Building Integrator Boot Camp coming up during that same pre-conference time frame. So if you're going to the conference, I recommend that you get there a day early. Number one, it's beautiful San Diego, as Eric points out, beautiful and sunny weather. But number two, spend some time that first day at the pre-conference events. Pre-conference events, especially for the integrators, are going to be some real key information.
Yeah, I tell you what, Leroy, our first experience at Realcomm IBCon, Ken and I were just blown away. We went to one of the pre-conference events. It was basically real estate folks that were teaching newer real estate folks about building automation controls and the issues. So it wasn't even, like vendors or anything. It was guys like Daryl Smith from Microsoft, and it just blew us away, the knowledge that these people have. So again, if you're like me, you go to, you listen to vendors speak, you always got to kind of filter it through. Well, they have an ulterior motive, where I think at Realcomm IBCon, these conferences, their only motive is to educate the people coming after them.
It's peer to peer. That's the real strength and benefit of the show. You've got education going on between real estate professionals, peer to peer, and then now we've really begun this push in the last 3 to 4 years with this Smart Building Integrator Summit, peer to peer collaboration among the integrators who are so desperately needed by these real estate professionals. Essentially, there's a lack of good and competent integrators, and this is a way that we as an integrator community can come together, share best practices, hear the word coming from our customers, and then basically sharpen our tools to make sure that we're ready for the next opportunity that when it comes up.
Well, and I think the great thing about, you mentioned Fred, and one of the things I love about listening to Fred speak is because, cybersecurity and IT is such just a huge, body of work, right? And one of the things I think Fred does so well, Leroy, as you do too, is for our systems integrators that might be thinking about going out, you're getting educated about it vis-a-vis what's germane to systems integrators. So you guys are coming at it from the perspective of a systems integrator. So if you're an integrator and you kind of get lost in all this stuff, because as you know, people can talk a lot about it from a lot of different perspectives. But, I think what Leroy and Fred offer is, hey, we're systems integrators. This is what you sort of need to know to be good at this.
And you know what, circling back to something Fred, you had said earlier too, is that everybody's involved, everybody plays a role. I think one of the biggest things too is that there's a culture that we need to create. Tell us a little bit about how you create a culture of cybersecurity awareness.
Absolutely. And I want to say this too. I think the last time, I can't remember the last time I was on here, and it's really been, I've gotten an education, because what's happened is, because there's been an uptick, and I'm fully engaged. I mean, I'm 100% cybersecurity for integration systems. And, because of that, it's been all these things that we've learned, or I've learned over this period of time, I'm putting it into practice now. And I'm seeing some of the thoughts that I had earlier on actually vetting out. And the reason I bring that up is one of the things that I used to tell people, and Leroy will agree with this, is you have to develop inside your organization the unicorn. That's what somebody called me one time, is a guy who knows IT and who knows OT. And so the insurmountable hill that it looks like you have to climb if you're a facilities operations guy can be aided, obviously, by bringing in outside people. But regardless of outside people and all this other stuff, inside the culture, as you say, Ken, you've got to begin to develop a SME who sits in there and understands both sides. And he can talk to the vendors, he can talk to IT, he can talk to. So inside of each organization, there is an investment in, obviously, to take a look at all of this stuff. But you need to develop an expert inside of your system that is able to talk both languages and is able to work with the vendors and be, hold them accountable, but also hold yourself accountable. In other words, when I do an assessment, I'm looking from a cyber risk, but I'm also looking from an operational risk. And the operational risk is, if IT implements something, there's potential to knock sequences of operations off. There's so many things that can happen to the control system. Now, the culture, you have to socialize it. You have to, as I said earlier, you can do all of the work on the hardware and put the policies together. But if you don't have buy-in from the people that are using the systems, it's just going to fail, because humans are the worst part of a cybersecurity strategy. But finally, let me say this is, one of the things that I like to do with customers is when I first engage with them, is I fish them. And if you know what fishing is, there's one called fishing and there's one called spear fishing. And spear fishing is typically what I do is, I see what I can get people to click on. They don't know it's me. And then when I get ready to go in and give the report, I say, well, I'll ask them, do you think you guys are susceptible to phishing or any of those kind of things? And then when they tell me no, I show them the report. So that's a huge eye opener, and it's a very simple thing to do. If you can show people, and it's not to call them out, it's not to make them look stupid, but what it is to make them aware. And then once you've shown them that, they're a little bit more receptive to what you got to say.
There are so many things going on now. I don't know whether you guys get the one or not, where you got the girl, she sounds like she dropped her headphone. She goes, hi, oh, hold on, I think I dropped my headphone. And are you there? And then you say yes, and they just recorded you saying yes, right? And then there's some vacation resort thing. Have you guys gotten that one yet?
No, but I know what you're talking about.
I have.
I figured out the exact way to do it, man. This is how you get off their list, okay? So you listen to all that stuff. You say you're interested. You hit yes. And they go, before we transfer you to one of our vacation representatives, let us ask you a couple of questions. Do you make more than $40,000 a year? You just say no to that, and they go, we're sorry, you don't qualify at this time.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Oh, man. Well, so Fred, you guys will talk a little bit about intelligent buildings, how people would engage you guys for your services.
Well, so real quick, I mean, we realize that it's a huge elephant that everybody's got to eat. So we have basically 4 levels of assessments. And one of them, what I call a level 1, is we basically take, it's an artifact review where we get all of your systems in, we do a review, and then I basically do a conversational audit with them. It's not a witch hunt. It just helps me to understand where they are. And having been doing integrations for 17 years, some of the things that they tell me, I can tell almost without ever looking at the system where their vulnerabilities are at a high level. And then, but all of this is rooted in, if you're not familiar with NIST, which is the National Institute of Science and Technology, is there are 5 tenets, which is identify, detect, protect, respond, recover. I can tell you that the identify piece of it, and Leroy, back me up on this if you think so, but most people, when they have their building systems put in 2 years, they're not really sure 100% of what all is connected to that network. You got to know that. And then you got to have some way to detect any threat anomalies. That's a little trickier. And then protect is putting the hardened bubble. But the one that gets most of the people, and you brought up malware before, is there is no respond. In other words, the integrator has come in and done all the programming. They backed your systems up locally. And a lot of times they're backed up to the machine that's actually running the system. Or the integrator leaves with the programs and you don't have them on site. So in order for you to recover, you either, if they're all on the machine that you have your front end on, and the front end is toast, well, you can't get them. So you have to rebuild and rely on your vendor to get you back up. Or if you did have things.
This. All right. Hey, well, Kenny, so sorry about that, man. It looks like we lost those guys, and we obviously went dark with them. So thanks again to Leroy and Fred Gordy.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Just 2 really, really smart, progressive, and empathetic people. In other words, they really have a genuine compassion to bring the industry forward, especially Fred Gordy. The way he just exudes, passion with that cybersecurity, and wants to help.
Well, he really does, wants to help for sure. And so definitely check out Realcomm Ibicon. And I tell you what, Kenny, we had some, good posts up this week, but the biggest post to me was we got the complete EasyIO FG training series up. It's a 9-part series that Mike Marston did, and phenomenal, soup to nuts, how to do it. It's all there. It's all free.
Well, we were talking about passion, and when we look at solutions, we look at the race to the small space, and we look at what we have, what kind of portfolios and sets of products we have. EasyIO has really taken the initiative to bring this to a hands-on solution. They give you the controller that's probably the fastest, has the most capabilities, has the embedded tools. It's the state of the art. They keep upgrading it every year. They make a point to keep ahead of the competition. 2, they realize the onus of training people and the shortage of personnel we have in our industry. And it takes people. You have to home grow them. You have to take a long time and kind of parallel train all the controls industry, how equipment works, how things are wired, all the way down to IT. People need to how routers work and networks, and then you have the integration tools. So it's a long process. Well, the more that you can put that into a video format, and the more accessible that video format is, the greater you're helping these young people get involved, or even people mid-season or mid-career. EasyIO has a place for everybody. If you wanted to learn how to do something now, the only thing preventing you from getting a mastery and expertise in a product is yourself.
Agreed. And we are going to be covering the EasyIO World Global Conference in Manchester, England. It's not too late to get over there. And I tell you what, if you haven't been to one of these events, it's quite an experience. As we've said on the show before, these guys are the masters of entertainment. It's a great product. You'll learn a lot. You'll have a good time, and you'll be able to write it off on your taxes. I'm not an accountant, but I think you can because it's a business trip. So you take your wife. She can get entertained. You can learn stuff. And we're going to go see Manchester United play soccer. As a matter of fact, I think you're going to go out and play a little bit with you. Aren't you going to scrimmage with them?
They said if you're going to play goaltender and I'm going to play center. So we're going to really do it. But yeah, you're right. They got interesting speakers. They just put the Keystone speakers out. You have Dave Kipling, Vice President of Jabal Circuit, Inc., Andreas Jazalunius, Automation Engineer from Hevegefeld Electro, Norway, and Jason Briggs, CEO of J2 Innovations. They're going to be the... Yep, and then you got Mike, Johan Shakarad, Limhun Chat, and the EasyIO Tech team will be doing presentations and breakouts throughout the event.
Fantastic, buddy. Fantastic. Well, it's going to be a great event. And just remember, Easy IO, Kenny, they call it easy for a reason. If you don't believe me, check out this video series. I mean, they just keep innovating, doing great stuff. So great job, Mike, Lim, and the rest of the team. We look forward to seeing you guys in Manchester, England. Hopefully you'll be there with us as well. And speaking of sort of innovative guys, Kenny Smyers, man, it is the dark episode, meaning that we are doing audio only for our next interview again, even though this guy is electric with video. He's way ahead of the curve. He always is. We call him Notre Damus. To introduce our guest, if you would, Kenny.
I'd love to, Eric. We have one of the most venerated people in the building automation business with us today, the owner-editor of Automated Buildings, Mr. Ken Sinclair. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. It's a bit weird not to be seeing you guys and the interaction. So if I have some pauses, you might remind me that it's now my turn to talk.
Well,
we'll
got
do
a lot
that,
to
brother.
talk about, though, huh? We missed you last month, and we got a great May edition to talk about. So what do you want to talk about first?
Okay. Well, our
Want to go back to that
edition
happy
that's
button?
on right now seems to be creating some interest. The Uberization of comfort and satisfaction, and ultimately working our way into productivity. It's kind of an intriguing thought, I think, is that we need to just look a little harder and some of the examples that are unfolding around us and see how we can imitate them and take not necessarily all the problems they have, but a lot of the solutions they're providing, and see what that might mean to our industry.
Well, that's a pretty clever association, Uber, because of what it represents, and it's the newest thing. B2B and Uber have kind of taken the world by storm, not just here in North America, but all over the world. But how do you see us evolving with the Uberization of comfort, satisfaction, and well-being? I mean, this occupant self-love, I called it, because the concept is really to make the person inside the space as happy, as productive, as healthy, as intrigued with their environment as possible. So it seems like we really and truly are integrating them into the building automation space, because they can take their new devices and say, I'm happy, or I'm cold, or I'm not, not happy. So how much progress are we making on that, Ken?
I think I was quite surprised that when I started poking around, I often do that. I set the theme out, and I don't. I kind of wonder how I'm going to make it all come true. But I was surprised that it actually, Comfy, of course, was hard at it with new location services, new company out of Vancouver, out of the UBC. Sensible Building Science is doing some pretty neat stuff, where they're tracking folks by their Wi-Fi presence, and they've got endorsement by Cisco, and so some neat stuff going on there. DOE's jumped in with their Voltronic or Voltron, I guess, platform, and they've. It's sort of interesting to see someone like DOE and Pacific Northwest National Labs hard at developing open software.
Ken, you mentioned Uber, for example, and Airbnb, and it seems like a trend in another industry where the real money is in not building the infrastructure like the hotels or the cars. It's in building the interface. I mean, if you make the interface, you're making a ton of money. I'm wondering, my question for you is, do you think we as an industry, I'm talking building automation controls, are still too fixated on the hardware? And is the real money to be made with the interface, a la the interface for Airbnb or Uber?
I hadn't really thought a lot about that. Obviously, there's the advertising pieces of it, and if you start stripping the model apart, it certainly has a different business. The kind of wake up call I was trying to give to the industry is that we need to change our thinking so that we fall into Uber think. So the idea of location services, basically detecting things without actually sensing our traditional temperatures, humidities, and stuff, that we will actually be sensing more people's people's big data is what I'm sort of seeing, is whether we're siphoning it off their watch or whether we're siphoning it off their phone, or if we're just simply taking it from the trail of their big data. So I was kind of looking more at it from our industry point of view rather than a new industry. But that's a good perception you had. Haven't thought much about it, so I can't add much to it.
Well, I appreciate it. And I tell you what, it's like, I think everything has its ups and its pros and its cons. And I tell you what, Ken, I'm looking at getting off the grid, buddy, but I'm not sure I can as long as I got a smartphone or I'm in an intelligent building. I mean, how do I hide now?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I'm not so fixated with hiding. I think this technologies are supposed to enable us. They basically all have the ability to shut off. Just because you're connected doesn't mean you're connected. It means you have the choice of being connected or not. So I think we just have to manage that. And some of the stuff we've been on the fringe of, just basically looking at the humanization of all of this, the well-being is a complex matter that we have to. How do we manage the digital distraction? I think that's our personal problem. I don't think that's society has to solve that for us.
I'm first in line for like a computer chip in my brain, so that's all going to take care of that for me, man. I'm gonna be like super highly focused. So I want some of that artificial intelligence that one of your writers, Dr. Igor Mezic, came up with. So if I get one of those algorithms, I'll be in good shape. I'm kind of joking a little bit, but it's really not that far fetched if you think about it. And I think it's sort of important to jump out and see, how this is showing up in other domains, because I agree or disagree. Building automation controls, as near as I can tell, we lag sort of behind technology-wise with everybody else. So if you want to know what's going to happen next, just sort of look at what Intel and Dell and some of these other people are doing is my take.
Yeah, although I think you also have to keep watching what some of the upstarts and independents are doing. Stuff like what Sensible Building Science is doing is pretty intriguing. Cisco jumped on the bandwagon when they saw what they were doing, but certainly a homespun idea. And there's a lot of that going on. We posted something on, came out of our IoT day. Some of the folks in Africa, basically, energy has evolved to pay as you go. And so what the energy system looks like is completely, it's off the grid because there is no grid. So somebody has created a grid, and the way you buy power from that grid is with your cell phone. And the way you buy it is you basically pay as you go, as you would a cell plan. So you decide to want to buy 2 days of energy, and you give them your cell phone information, and click, the light comes on for 2 days, and click, it goes off. So it's pretty interesting that here we have rapid evolution occurring in a third world environment, and interesting stuff. I tweeted that post, so it's an interesting one to watch.
Well, there's been so much that has happened in the last 2 months. Ken, I'd just like to take a step back into April. When we had Press Here for Instant Happiness, because I think what you're doing here is we have a kind of a sequence going here where we started, I believe you brought this up probably about 6 months ago, and we always were kind of aware of Comfy and some of the other things, but this is really going to get, we haven't even heard the beginning. I don't think everybody in our industry has fully grappled with this reality, but we take this also with happiness and comfort, but also with lights, and how important lights are into things like schools and hospitals and recovery times and things like that. So why don't you talk just kind of summarize your April Make Me Happy editorial?
Yeah, I think that's something we've got to start working on as an industry, is to kind of come up with a happiness factor. And of course, again, it was kind of a joke, and again, it was kind of funny because it came from the early days of DDC, when we started seeing what was happening in the space, and we started generating comfort numbers, and we started experimenting with some of this stuff. We were in an environment where the owner was very sophisticated and was extremely pleased to do that, and so I had the luxury of digging into that at a very early time, and we came up with a temperature comfort factor, and so what came out of that was the joke that what we really needed was a make me happy button. And out of all your frustrations of what was going on in the space, you just simply push this button and it sent back to the DDC system that I'm not happy. And then it would start the dialogue, and it's kind of an interesting idea. Of course, back then in the early 80s, that was no way we could do that. But now with social media, we actually do have the ability to actually sense how people feel, and we can get rapid communication, and we can do quantitative analysis and try and figure out some of that stuff. So it's a changing time, and it's kind of a meshing of old ideas and new ideas. And I'm afraid what's happening is a lot of people in our industry are running away, screaming the IoT monster is going to get us, or the clouds are falling, and these kinds of things. But I believe we really need to get our heads in these clouds and understand more what IoT is, and basically take the knowledge that we all have as an industry and use it effectively to make this gigantic change happen, because it is a very significant change in the industry for sure.
No, agreed. And I think it goes right into the trend that you've been tracking and we've been tracking, the $300 rule. Basically, $3 per energy, $30 for the stuff you put in the space, but $300 per square foot, based on what you're having to pay the people. So if you can get people more productive, right, you're effectuating a big change to the bottom line. And and I think it goes right into the make me happy, right? So you got the smiley face or the sad face. So if there is a correlation between happiness and productivity, that's definitely where we should be playing with as an industry.
The other thing that came out of one of those conversations that was pretty interesting, I think it was actually Paul from ESI that brought it up, was within these companies, we're now starting to see the average is the $300 a square foot folk, but we're now starting to see the $1,000 and the $10,000 and the $50,000 a foot folks who are the superheroes, the Zuckerbergers of life, and those kind of guys that are so incredibly valuable that the rock stars, I guess, that need even more attention and more access to complete satisfaction, ever what that may be. And so that was an interesting, basically adjunct to that whole productivity thing, that there are people within the productivity piece that are really significant, and there's a whole bunch of other people who their job is to support the superheroes. So interesting take on it, but it's changing for sure. The other one that intrigues me is that we've always been in the business of sensing temperature, humidity, even indoor air quality and CO2 and all that kind of stuff in the space. But we're now, as we're all starting to move and have more devices, I got a smartwatch in my arm here. It does my heartbeats and how far I bike today and what kind of shape I'm in, and has all kinds of big data, basically spooling some of this big data directly off our wrists into databases, and we can start to understand better the clients within the building. There may not, we always run into this privacy issue, but again, if folks choose to green button or blue button that out, then they will receive a different level of service than those that choose to be not identified. So anyway, some interesting stuff.
Right. Yeah. In fact, a virtual occupancy metering method, people counting without the need for physical sensors. That is a very cool interview with the gentleman. What's his name? Dr. Stefan Story.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yeah, actually, that video is really good too. It's really well done. Cisco's done a great job on putting together that video, and actually shows off our UBC campus really nice too, which is wonderful.
And I think the point they make too is that that data is not. It's what do you call it? You're anonymous. In other words, it doesn't have your name. It doesn't have any important information about you. It simply makes the relationship more accurate. So it's the greatest zoning. It's the greatest. In that interview, he discusses that it really gives you the truth of what's going on as far as occupancy and unoccupancy. And then sometimes when you're supposed to be in an unoccupied period, there'll be a lot of people there for a meeting that came out of nowhere. But and how it's all documented. So it was an unoccupied period, but there was a meeting there. It wasn't planned, so you can track it. But even though it costs money to do that, it's the most important emphasis is on the comfort and on facilitating those people.
A little adjunct to that too is it started as the people counter for basically optimizing lights, energy within the university environment. About halfway through the project got funded by the university themselves, because what it told them is that it told them how their facilities were being used and how they could optimize them better. The hall that they had always booked for 500 people and only 50 show up, and then they had the hall that they were booking for 50 and there was 150 standing in the so basically just where are the people flowing at any given time in a university is incredibly valuable information, and way more valuable than it is to us. As valuable as it is to us to control air conditioning, lighting, it's way more valuable to the guy who builds the buildings and basically optimizes the space in a 20 million square foot campus or something. So interesting stuff for sure.
Well, it sure is, and the data just you keep pulling the thread of data, like you were saying. For a fire department that's responding to a 6-story building that's has fire alarms going on, to know where people are at accurately and having that help from the building automation. So as the fire department responds, they know the water pressure, which side where they should approach the building for the best set up an entry control point. All this information is coming out of the data that the people inside the facility are providing just by communicating with the automation system.
And the thing with data is that it's just data, and the people are going to slice and dice it a completely different way than we ever imagined. And for the whole new generation, the millenniums, and like when you get inside of Brad's head and see what Nigel is written up, it's basic. Nigel is using this Voltron system. And he's excited about getting it into the hands of his engineers, as he started as research information, but they're now starting to see the value of that data, and they're seeing how they can build on it, and actually how they can build apps that actually just dovetail in, and then they build another app that does another thing. So it's becoming quite clear that the engineering firm of the future is going to look tremendously a lot like a software developer, and they're going to be looking for which open standards they support. They're also going to look for big pieces of the industry that they can apply, and I think you'll see the systems integrators will start to follow, and they'll become like a new class of systems integrators that'll follow the progressive consultants that are out there. And I think you're going to have a great chance to meet some of those folks at Haystack, because the stack just got bigger. Because what's happening there is we just identified all this big data that's coming from phones, watches, routers, existing things that we already have, and it all needs to be named. So we can. So
Ken, real quick for our listeners that might be hopping in sort of late in the game. Explain to them Haystack, what Haystack tagging is and why it's significant.
Okay, Project Haystack is an effort that's been going on for 5, 6 years, 7 years maybe, and it is to come up with a naming convention. Its main purpose is that it becomes machine readable, because if machines can read the big data, then we don't have to try and work with it. So if we take all of our big data, and this is kind of very simplified, Ken's shot from the hip, but anyway, if we take all our big data and we name it with something like Haystack's standard naming convention, then we can pull information out. We can actually build graphics. We can actually build engineering pieces of our system. We can slice and dice the data in completely different ways. We can look at a particular person's data if we chose to have that identified. So there's a whole range of things that are occurring. The other thing that has happened with Project Haystack is it has grown immensely over the last few years, and its acceptance is very far-reaching now. And Intel is supporting them at this session in Tampa. I assume you guys are going down, correct?
We're going to be there. You going to be there?
No, I can't actually. That's I usually take Jane for our anniversary, but this is our 50th anniversary, so somehow she feels that's special. So
congratulations,
Ken.
we're going to have some folks over instead of going to Haystack. So there you go.
Well, we'll be your cameras and microphones on the ground.
Super. Actually, talking about that, the other great big event that's coming up for us all that I am going to be at is IBCon Realcomm.
Yes.
And we're really pleased with that. I'm really pleased they've invited Brad in as well, and he's leading some fairly significant discussions there. One about getting more millenniums into the industry, and so there's just a lot of stuff going on. I don't know. I kind of sense it from you guys too, as I see your posts and I see where you are, and it kind of looks like your life is starting to be a bit blurry. The telephone poles are kind of looking like a picket fence, and
I think we're in a upheaval's probably not the right word for it, but it's, as you know, our industry's always been dynamic, not very static. But I think, if you look, it's a little bit like now we're in a Maserati, and we've got the pedal to the metal, so to speak. So it's all coming so quickly that, thank gosh for people like you and your publication that help us all make sense of it. And thank gosh for, things like Haystack and Realcomm IBCom, because, I just don't think there's a clear definition. There's so many possibilities that it's almost like there are no possibilities.
Yeah, actually, I've been working a little bit with the folks from Realcomm and Howard, and man, he's just got a mammoth job there to try and put this into a program. And there's even more complications. Like some of the complications is that some of the unfolding technologies are not completely aligned with the folks that are sponsoring these shows. So it's we have this situation that some of this stuff rolls out and it kills everybody in the room, and that's complicated because the room was paid for by somebody who doesn't really want the thing to go this direction. So so some interesting times and interesting technologies unfolding, and giant shifts in the way business will be done. So I think it's all our job to just try and understand best we can. And it's probably good that we are all got our own little idea how this might work, because I think in a lot of ways it will probably work in several different models, which I think in the past you described us as being pretty flexible and stuff. I don't think that's true. We've always been a fairly rigid industry, and it's been controlled by a few folks, and there's been a few upstarts that kind of make minor changes, and then what happens is they become so annoying the big companies buy them, and then that actually sort of changes the big companies. That's kind of been the pattern in the past. But
Kenny and I are hoping we can be annoying enough that some big company will come along and buy us. You got any ideas on how we can be more annoying?
Yeah.
Well, Ken, I think you hit the nail on the head, and see that's the trend that we're seeing is like it's a double-sided sword. So when these incredible events take place with IoT and when you have technology where somebody like AZIO's taking the fastest router out there with the greatest memory and fastest processing speeds, and then adding IO to it, and then has a tool that can go out there and it's given away, and then the training to go with it now is given. I think on one hand it's great for the for the universe and for the globe and for the people that can't dig into controls or building automation. They're just still working with thermostats in some primitive ways, and they can't get into the higher, more sophisticated strategies to save money and control their building and do the things we just talked about earlier with making people happier. But I think you have to pay with something. Remember that story about you should be cannibalizing 1/3 of your business to pay for the next generation, and how companies like Kodak and Xerox almost didn't do it, but they had the world at their fingertips, and they actually owned digital imaging and photograph, and they said they'd rather sell toner, ink, and make you take photos that they developed. So I think that's kind of the process where you were saying about people in that room that are showing the new technologies are actually there at the expense of the old technologies that put them there. So that's a
Ken,
dilemma.
real quick, I was at a conference this week, a meeting, and I think one of your, a guy that we learned about first from your publication, which is automatedbuildings.com. So for our community out there, you got to check automatedbuildings.com out. It's where everybody gets educated. Ken and I refer to your site all the time, but a company called CMON, and they were doing a presentation with a bunch of other people, and they're talking about changing the way we connect everything, the savings to connect everything using their technology, a connected sort of cabling solution that brings all of it together. So instead of 10 different type of cables, you use the one, uses a lot less power, and at the same time it allows you to a level of cybersecurity, right? Because if you've got the same network, you're able to sort of monitor activity on it. But that's another technology that's just sort of changing how we're doing things. You mentioned about like the sensors, for example. The lighting people were there. The sensors are going to be in the lights now. That's going to change. What hasn't changed yet, and we had a couple of enlightened consultants, you called them progressive, Kenny and I call them enlightened consulting engineers were at this meeting. They're starting to get it, but what we still have, so many of these technologies in different silos, and they're not being integrated together. And I think that's where the real opportunity comes in. If you can get everything integrated, and hopefully it's our master systems integrators and the building automation controls are going to be sort of the hub, which all these other things revolve around. But your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we're going to evolve more into systems houses, and this is all complex to put this together to make the decision. In fact, should it be wired or should it be wireless? It's getting incredibly complicated, and you get these things, and somebody's working on his new wire standard, but then somebody else jumps right over them and does the whole thing wireless, and it's like, that's interesting. And the Wi-Fi is starting to become just a more common, easy interface that people can control and secure, and so there's a whole movement there. So there's all these different camps that are moving in different directions. So the master systems integrator has certainly got his work cut out for him. I don't envy him. I'd rather be running a newspaper and selling newspapers on the street and trying to just report on what it is I'm seeing, rather than trying to make a real decision for a real building as to what's the best solution. Because the best solutions in the past have not necessarily, I think, going to be the solutions in the future. Just went to a condo the other day, and it had there had to be at least a $10,000 structured cabling panel in the corner. And when you opened that panel, none of the cables were plugged into anything. What was in there was a Wi-Fi router. because nobody wanted to go through the complication of trying to figure out. It was basically the whole thing was designed, wired. I'm sure that cost $10,000 a suite for sure, and nobody's using it. And there's many examples of that. So this whole leap over wired stuff is we have, it's a bigger problem. We have people, that's their industry, and they basically pull cables and sell devices. And then there's other people that are sort of thinking that this is, well, if we did this, we could actually eliminate those devices. And it's like, ooh. That's why I say the discussions that kill everybody in the room are interesting ones. So it's interesting time. I don't profess to understand. I'm just trying to make people aware. I don't think that it's wise to ignore that all of this is going on, and I don't think you can ignore it and it'll all go away. It's going to fall on you someday. But and I believe that if you kind of understand what's going on, I think there's a play for all of us in it. I don't think anybody's going to be without a job that has the knowledge we have, because in the final analysis, this is going to take our buildings and put them under a microscope. And we've got, you guys know that every one of the buildings you're in, it's got holes in it you can drive a truck through. Yeah. So the first thing they're going to do is when they look at it with a microscope is we say, we can't see the problem because these problems are so friggin' big, they got to be fixed. And we said, that's what we've been telling you for the last 5 years. So let's get them fixed. Well, I think our industry is going to shift, and so people will be buying bits and pieces to make that system work or upgrade it. I think that's going to be. I think upgrades are going to be a lot. Where it's possible to sort of plug in a device to pick up my 1912 pneumatic thermostat here and bring it in. Cypress, Harry Sims is doing that with his plug-in pneumatic devices that are DDC and cloud connected and stuff. It's kind of a leapfrog. So I think because of our incredible infrastructure of existing buildings, there's just an amazing opportunities will open. I would actually be surprised that if your business in the final analysis didn't increase in the next bunch of years. That'd be my shot from the hip.
Well, I think you had mentioned this before too, that nothing happens overnight. Everything moves in half measures, and you make strides, but you never get it's a journey, and then you run sprints, and then you run, and you walk, and then you run another sprint, but you're moving in a direction that's not, you're moving to uncomfortable ground. You're moving out of a sweet spot into the next industry or the next development or trend in the industry. So I think it's always good coaching that you do that, is not to scare. I think the tendency is that, like you were saying, the cloud is falling and everything, as people get caught up and almost like, the media aspect of it. But the reality is that you still need the equipment to work. I think Paul Oswald had said that too, is that everybody was talking about this great analytic package and this incredible graphics, and now we're going to do comfy stuff and make people happy and get feedback using social media. He said, but nobody fixed the chiller. Nobody's actually listened to the real problem of this building is that they have an antiquated piece of equipment that if you have one dime to spend it on that equipment, and then your life will get better from there.
But I think our budgets, they got this leap from from the $1 a square foot to the $10 a square foot, or the $3 a square foot to the $30 a square foot is huge. And we're also saying that $30 a square foot or $300 a square foot, is potentially bigger than that. So all of a sudden now we should have a lot of money available, and the whole infrastructure of our buildings are changing. What people want out of the buildings is completely different too. So all of a sudden, buildings of
It's a millennial point of view, Ken. They want all the comfort in the world, but they want it to be net zero energy usage. It's the millennial buildings, right? They want it all.
So and they can have it. It's just money, right? So when that money starts to get spent, they're going to buy more controls. They're going to need people. They're going to have to come to the traditional people. How can we do this? How can we got this funny old system. Yeah. Do we really have to take the steam system out? Yeah, maybe. Maybe we have to take the steam system out, you know.
Nice.
Maybe we have to take this, these 1912 Johnson thermostats that are still working fine. They've got to kind of come out. And maybe we can actually leave the covers still on the marble wall.
You sound like the way my wife describes me as being an older guy. Hey, we're talking to Ken Sinclair, AutomatedBuildings.com. We haven't talked to Ken in a while, so you have the April and the May issue to catch up on if you haven't already. And Ken, you got your June issue coming out pretty soon. Mm-hmm. Too soon to find out what the theme on the June issue is going to be.
No, it's there. We basically, I just sent it to you here.
Yeah, I have it. It's sensing. You use a euphemism. You say.
Yeah.
Here,
there, I got
right
it
here.
Too. Yeah. You go, Ken. You talk better than I do.
Well, it's just it's a very good theme. I love it, and it's sensing the change. So what you do is you say it's a double entendre. It's a figure of speech or a particular way of wording that's devised to be understood in two ways and have a double meaning. So sensing obviously would be sensing like temperature, and then sensing means like there's something going on. There's something afoot, and so I think that's the double. I would say that would be the intent of the double.
Well, I can't wait to see that. And Ken, I got to tell you, man, you, the way you write and all. Look, so let's just do this. Let's forget about Haystack. Let's me, you, Kenny, and Jane go to Paris. Let's get some berets. Let's sit around some cafes. Let's drink coffee all night and write some stuff. What do you say?
Take pictures too.
Yeah, take pictures. Hey, Ken, buddy, we're going to have to hop off, but thank you so much as usual. Our guest, the one to only Ken Sinclair, AutomatedBuildings.com. Check his issues out. Ken, we'll catch up with you next month, buddy.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ken.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so we went dark with Ken Sinclair again. It was just been one of those days, technology-wise. I tell you what, it's you and I. Actually, I threw my hands up a couple of times and said, we're just not going to do a show this week, but we soldiered on. Not our best work, Kenny. Definitely Fred Gordy and Leroy Walden and Ken Sinclair. I mean, we owe it to those guys to get their content out, because what great guests and what great thinkers.
Well, yeah, just seeing the layout, and what you did was, I think you overtaxed it. We have 5 computers going. We had, mixing board, soundboard, 3 video cameras, and a couple other, odds and ends stuff. And I think it just went blink.
Yeah, but why did it have to go just blink 40 minutes into an interview? That twice, right? That was just like unbelievable. But such is the life of doing videos. It's a labor of love for me and Kenny. Kenny is, the real short story, if you haven't heard it, Kenny and I met many, many years ago at a Johnson Controls meeting. We sat next to each other. I'm over there kind of doodling a little bit, and Kenny goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm just here to earn a little bit of money. I'm going to be a painter one day. I paint. That's what I wanted to be, was a painter. Not the kind of painter that paints houses, but pictures." And Kenny goes, "Well, I'm going to be a famous writer one day. I'm going to write the next great American novel." And from that, a friendship was born. And we would go to these meetings, and you'd ask me, "What have you been painting?" I'd ask you, "What have you been writing?" And we'd sort of encourage each other in our perspective things. And
we still had that college spirit there. We still thought it was doable, and
that still is doable, baby. You just wait and see, man.
Well, it was. I remember like it was yesterday. And the truth is that we did realize a certain amount of our goals, and Controltrends is a manifestation of the artsy stuff you do with the video world and photography,
and the great writing you do on the blog side. So
I try, but I enjoy it. So, and then, like you say, it doesn't always work the way you want it to. And like you say, you could invest a whole lot of time and energy into something, and it all just goes down. It's like programming a controller, and you're right. I'll set to hit save, and it doesn't. Somehow it holds up, and you lose all the time and effort you put into it.
Well, such is life. And you and I are heading down tomorrow. We're getting in the car and we're driving down to Tampa to what I like to call, you say tomato, I say tomato conference, the Haystack Connect, which Ken Sinclair alluded to it, and it's going to be fantastic. I sort of had a different spin on it. I mean, when you say tomato and tomato, what it really does, because all these manufacturers might name something like a discharge air temperature, or one might call it a mixed air sensor, one might call it whatever. And what Haystack tags allow you to do is take all those in and translate them to one common saying, right? So again, if a manufacturers call it different things, Haystack will act as a translator. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to move big data around very, very quickly. It allows you to troubleshoot very, very quickly. I mean, it is truly sort of the engine underneath everything, Kenny, that is going to really drive this whole big data thing.
Well, they've got some stuff up their sleeves that they plan. Some of the most interesting presentations we've ever seen have been done by Scott. And Scott Mensch has always been, even when he was with Tritium, he was trying to push the envelope, try technology, put himself out on center stage and make it or break it. Well, they did that at the last Haystack, and it was a great presentation because you walk away impressed by the concept and what semantics really mean, and how if the industry and all the building automation folks get behind Haystack, it's going to make everybody's life simpler in the future. But they've got some really important breakouts. I mean, this thing grew. I mean, Mark Peacock and John Petsy do a great job. They start, kind of the way we do in many ways is you see what's coming up, you plan, you pick a nice location. They had a nice video there that kind of forecasted where it was going to be, and it just kind of generates some excitements. But now when you take a look at the speakers, you take a look at the sponsors, and you take a look at the general session and the technical program, I mean, you've got some very serious heavyweights to include Intel that are going to be present there, and networking and making an impact, see what's going on,
To me, Haystack is to our building automation controls industry what Windows was to software, going from DOS to Windows. I mean, it has that much of an impact on it. So it's going to be great stuff. Kenny and I will be covering it down there. We're going to take our camera gear, if I don't break it all after we get done with this. Fingers crossed that we'll actually finish this show before something else goes wrong. But we'll be covering it, so you can check into Controltrends and see what's going on there. So, buddy, I tell you what, man, with that, knock on wood, we've been doing this all day long. We got to get busy editing because we get up early tomorrow to drive to Tampa. So with that, again, very special thanks to our guests, Fred Gordy, Leroy Walden, and of course, Ken Sinclair, a.k.a. Otto. So with that, Kenny, remember, be bold, stay in control.
Indeed.
Kenny Smyers.
Woo-hoo.